wait till next time and improve 2 meetings worth. We'll just go right into community input. We'll let everybody say what they want to say, and I think our job will be to listen. So how many people you have there, Jessica? Quite a few?
Well, people are logging on right now, so
Okay.
we're waiting for that to, yep. Okay, we're up to 20.
Okay. Well, I think we can start and things. So welcome everybody to our Police Community Relations and Review Commission meeting. This meeting is going to serve as our once yearly, what we call community meeting. The ordinance that established the PCRRC requires us to have 1 meeting a year where we seek basically community input. So that's really the only thing on our agenda tonight. We're looking for community input that might be your experiences of policing in Oxford, and community input about things you would like to see as far as policing in Oxford goes. And most people are aware that we have a work group working on a proposal that City Council has given to us about things to supplement police work in Oxford, such as emergency response teams or social workers, because we, like many cities, call on our police officers to take care of a lot of problems that arise in society that are more than just policing, such as drug issues, homelessness, poverty, mental health issues, and such. And so this work group is looking into ways to supplement the work in Oxford to serve the citizens. So the people in attendance, if you raise your hand, Jessica will unmute you. You will need to state your name and your address. The meeting is being recorded, so just so you know, what you say will be out there forever. I would ask that you try to stay on topic as to your experiences of policing in Oxford and ways you think we can help the Oxford Police Department improve its services to the community to both protect and serve. If we can just stay on those topics and not get off topic about things. I want to respect everyone's time, especially the commission members and Chief Jones and Jessica, who I know go to a lot of meetings and want to have a life as well as meeting with city people. So if you have something you want to say about policing in Oxford, raise your hand. Jessica will unmute you and we will just begin. Unless I missed anything, any commission members think I missed something I should have said? Okay. All right. Go ahead, Jessica.
The only thing I'll add is if you are a call-in user and you want to speak, if you press *6, I'll see that you're raising your hand that way. All right, so at this point, if you would click the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen, I will be able to unmute you and invite you to speak. And our first one is Chris Roten. Go ahead.
Unmute yourself.
All right. Good evening. Thanks for holding this forum and allowing people to come on. My name is Chris Roten. I live at 26 Gardenia Drive in Oxford. So I work out at Talawanda High School and have worked in the district for a number of years. One of the things that I wanted to just highlight tonight a little bit is, my interaction with OPD again has been about a 20-year relationship, being an administrator in the school and just the resources they have for us. But I wanted to speak a little bit about Officer Butler, who is our school resource officer at the high school. He has done a fantastic job, and it's been a little bit tricky here as of late with snow days and doing our learning online and remotely. I know that Chief Jones has had to sort of reassign him various places as we've had times where school has not been in session. But even when we have not been actively in session, I continue to see Officer Butler reach out to students as they will email him or message him through the website when they have concerns or struggles or issues. They see him as a real resource in our building, and I think that's a wonderful asset for us to have. And it's really due to his active role in seeking out relationships with students, building relationships, talking to them, making sure they're comfortable with him. I really do also appreciate his background. Having background in social work is a perfect marriage for us and what we do with our students in the building. I know that there are probably, just like we have when we have teaching openings, there are probably lots of candidates that Chief Jones has to go through, and for him to have the foresight to bring in a candidate that had some social work background is a tremendous, like I said, an asset for us. His work that he does with our staff, with our students, with the administration has been really great. And I know that's not something that a lot of our community folks get to see or get to hear a lot about, because it's one of those pieces that we're sort of in our own little niche out there. And and Rick is with us again, every day when we're in session. And so I know the community doesn't see him as much. And I know Officer Wagers at the middle school is highly regarded as well. But my time working with Officer Butler has been a real joy, and he's a true professional, and oftentimes has lots of great ideas for improving the safety of our building. But not only that, he also has lots of great ideas of how to get kids resources that they need outside of our building. Again, leaning on his social work background and understanding how that can really impact the life of a student, not only while they're in school learning, but when they're at home. So I just wanted to mention tonight that I've just been real impressed with his work and the support we've gotten from OPD through that partnership. So thanks again for that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roten. In my dual role as also being on the school board, I appreciate that input and feedback. Go ahead, Jessica.
I don't see any other raised hands at this point, so I'm waiting. All right, next we have Amy Masechko.
Good evening. My name is Amy Masechko. I live at 110 Prevalent Drive here in Oxford, and I'm here tonight speaking as the project coordinator for the Coalition for a Healthy Community here in the Oxford area. I really appreciate this opportunity to share the value that Oxford Police Department has brought to the Coalition. The Coalition is a collaborative group of community representatives who are committed to building a healthier Oxford area. We identify, prioritize community health concerns, and implement strategies with our partners to foster healthy behaviors. OPD has been an integral member of the Coalition since the very beginning in 1997, when the focus of our work was solely focused on drug and alcohol use and misuse prevention. Over the years, as the Coalition has expanded our focus to include other public health areas, OPD has strengthened their involvement and been instrumental to achieving positive health outcomes in the community. We've always had a member of OPD on the Coalition leadership team, and currently we are proud to have Lieutenant Laura Fenning as the law enforcement sector representative, as well as her service on the alcohol and other drug work group. Chief Jones represents OPD on our mental health work group. Both of their leadership and insight are critical to achieving our mission. Over the years, we've worked with many OPD officers through numerous initiatives, including drug take-back events, Cookies with Cops to support our youth, and the Fresh Air Fair, where officers have been involved in bike rodeos and preparing child identification kits. OPD has been a tremendous supporter of the Coalition's work, and I truly appreciate their professionalism and the way in which they champion the Coalition's mission. Several years ago, Chief Jones attended a mental health work group meeting and shared his desire to participate in the One Mind campaign through the International Association of Chiefs of Police. The One Mind campaign seeks to ensure successful interactions between law enforcement and people in crisis and/or with mental health issues or disorders. This campaign requires that a department takes a pledge to implement 4 promising practices, one of which is to train and certify 100% of sworn officers and selected non-sworn staff in mental health awareness courses, such as mental health first aid training. We were thrilled as a coalition by this voluntary initiative. And in January of 2018, the coalition began intentionally partnering to provide mental health first aid training for public safety officials in the greater Oxford area. Since then, we have supported the training of 62 individuals, the vast majority of them being from OPD. We've also had active participation by Oxford police officers in QPR suicide prevention training as well. I applaud Chief Jones and the Oxford Police Department for their commitment to achieving this designation and their intentional efforts towards assuring that all officers have these critical skills and this training. The coalition seeks to build a healthier community for all residents of the greater Oxford area, and our collaboration and partnership with OPD is critical to doing this work, and we are very grateful for the partnership. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. I think that's good information that kind of dovetails with some of the things that the work group is trying to do. And I hope that at some point you and they can connect to talk about the things already going on in the police department in Oxford, and some ways that we can continue that work. So thank you very much. And I know the coalition has done tons of good things in Oxford. You're very appreciated. Okay, Jessica, do we?
Yep. Next we have Ms. Shaman. Go ahead.
Good evening. Hi, Amy Shaman, speaking for myself and my family. We're at 11 Heather Ridge Court here in Oxford. I am calling tonight to say thank you to the commission and to the members of the working group for their dedicated work on behalf of the entire community. And I appreciate that you have, as part of the charter of the PCRRC, to have an open meeting and to be able to hear from the community as well. I'd like to talk about two things in particular. One, we're appreciative of the efforts that have gone into having this working group and the efforts that the group is taking to find solutions for Oxford that move us forward towards our community being one where everyone can be who they are and find safety and assistance and all the pieces that come together, some of which Amy Masechko was just talking about. And secondly, we appreciate the effort and willingness of Chief Jones and his staff to have this pilot program that I believe Officer Wagers, my apologies if I'm mispronouncing their name, what Officer Wagers is doing to present to specialize and have some expertise in mental health and to care for the people in our community who have particular needs. We've seen examples, as I believe the working group is looking at, of other communities, both small and large, that are striving to have some of the common police calls that really do not have a threat within them and do not necessarily require someone with a weapon to be there. I appreciate that there's exploration of that and how that can come together for Oxford. So thank you for all this work, for everyone involved, for the city and supporting it, for OPD and supporting it, and appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Just a reminder, if you're a phone call and you're calling in, you press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. If
No,
you'd
do you have somebody?
If you'd like to speak, this would be a good time to raise your hand.
Okay, while we're waiting, I may impose on Larry. I'll wait, but if there's a pause, Larry, I may ask you to give us kind of an update on what the work group is doing, so people present can sort of see how we've gotten started off with that and where we are and where we're going. But right now, we'll let the next person speak.
All right, Mr. Humphreys, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Brandon Humphrey. I live at 609 Ogden Court. We've already heard a few, a good few people speak up so far, and I think that's wonderful. I'm thankful to the PCRRC for holding this meeting, and I want to thank OPD and our city administrators for advertising this event on social media. But I do want to address a concern that I have, and I think it's something that we all know, which is that our entire community probably isn't going to be represented here tonight. Right? There are folks who maybe didn't have enough notice to make time for this, weekday night meeting. There are folks who might not be plugged in on social media. And honestly, there are probably folks who have issues in Oxford who are pretty disengaged from politics altogether, either because they have, more important fires to put out in their personal lives, or because they don't see a point to being engaged. We do have those members of our community who are more cynical, and I think sometimes for good reason. And so if we really want to hear the people of Oxford, then I think we need to engage people early and often and through numerous channels. I know that getting everyone to engage can feel like getting blood from a stone sometimes, right? That's something that folks in Black Lives Matter know very well. I know it's something that the PCRRC and the city in general know very well. And I appreciate efforts like the policing survey, the working group, that even this meeting. But at the same time, I look forward to seeing how the PCRRC and OPD can continue to take a more active role in reaching out to serve the members of our community who tend not to make their way to these meetings, right? And I think it's sort of this double whammy where these are the folks who may have the most issues, or things they want to address about policing or other things in the city more generally. um, and at the same time, they're also the people who aren't able to come to these meetings, or for other reasons just don't engage. And so I feel like if we really, again, if we really want to serve and protect, right, this idea of serving our community, that means that the people who are in these positions of leadership need to be actively going out into the community and reaching out to those people, and not just waiting for them to come to you. So again, I appreciate all these efforts. Thank you all for hearing this tonight, and I think that's about all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. And thank you for mentioning this survey the city put out. For people that don't know, a random survey around the area of policing in Oxford. Hopefully they get response, and that was sent out randomly. We'll see how that goes. And I think Brandon does bring up a point that we're all aware of, that it's very difficult to hear from everybody. And of course, COVID makes it hard then to physically go to places and reach out to people. So it's kind of made this more difficult. I know the commission had a lot of dreams of doing different reach outs to different neighborhoods, and then COVID came and made this difficult. So doing the best we can, but I would agree that these methods don't reach everybody. Thank you.
All right, next we have phone number ending in 2147. Go ahead.
Helen Rogers, 518 Edge Hill Drive. I do not have a specific concern. I signed on just to increase my knowledge of what's going on in my city that will be celebrated, that I will be celebrating 50 years as a resident next month. Thank you for your time and your effort.
Well, thank you very much for tuning in. It's always good to have people that want to learn what's going on.
Oh.
All right, next we have Miss Wade. Go ahead.
Hi, I would just like to give a huge shout out to the Oxford Police Department for partnering with the special ed portion of the school district and training people in how to react and interact with people who may have other abilities. We've seen across the nation that that can have unfortunate results when there's not someone with an understanding and compassion for that. And I just like to say again, thank you. I think there's a leadership partnership between Stephanie Jones and Chief Jones that makes that very comforting. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. That's also good to hear.
All right, next we have League of Women Voters, Oxford.
Hi, it's Kathy Brinkman. I'm sorry, sometimes my account comes up as League and sometimes it comes out as me as an individual, and I haven't figured out why. I live at 404 Emerald Woods Drive. I'm speaking on my own behalf tonight, and I appreciate the commission and I appreciate the Oxford Police Department as well. I did receive a random sample on my experience with the police department, and what occurred to me as I answered the questions is that I don't know a lot about the police department. I don't have a lot of interactions, and I don't really know a lot of the challenges that they're facing. And it occurred to me as I was answering the questions that sometimes I couldn't answer them at all. And I made a suggestion on the survey that perhaps more information on what the police department is doing, the challenges they're facing, the programs that they run. I've been on the website, I see some of that, but it didn't occur to me to look for it until I was thinking over the fact that I just don't have a lot of information. I think it would be a good outreach. I'm not sure what form it should take. I'm not sure what other departments, in the state or across the country do to communicate with their citizens, but I think that it would be very helpful. A couple of years ago, when the new police building was finished, there were tours given, and I found that a very nice opportunity to walk through and hear what was going on with police, hear some of their procedures. And so I think that perhaps that would be a good idea as well. But I think a more general communication to the public would be useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
I don't see any currently, oh, here's a couple, hold on. All right, Ms. Ragu, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I'm still at work, so I'm trying to get somewhere where you don't hear barking dogs all the time. Okay, so I was able to listen to your work session last night. So, and I took some notes about kind of what everyone's thoughts were, because I mean, the biggest point of tonight is to discuss adjunctive ways to address public safety for Oxford that might be supplemental to a standard police officer. So I think that, my personal experiences with the police have been fantastic. They've done great at detective work. They do a really good job in dangerous situations. That's awesome. And I also have been very aware of comments that the chief has made about such things like sexual assault or homelessness, that the police is not going to be the complete answer to that. That homelessness is not something that we need to arrest someone. It's not a criminal problem to not be able to afford a home. So I think that to have that initial compassion is really helpful. The concern about tonight is because you have such compassionate police officers, it's not the question of do they have that compassion, but it is who is the best person to try to solve systemic issues like domestic violence, like breaking the cycle of homelessness, substance abuse, mental health. Is policing solving those problems, or is it a Band-Aid that we might ask them to put on the situation? So whenever y'all were talking about the roles of a social worker, I mean, it really seems pretty positive, right? Everyone's saying that there are some mental health system failures that, and some of the quotes are, the police are forced to handle. There might be a better way to serve some people with different resources, such as a social worker. They're reaching out to social workers when you need adult protective services or the probate court system, not knowing how to navigate it. So social workers have been really key to being helpful. So there was also the Alexandria police chief that didn't understand initially how beneficial a social worker could be, but now seeing that there's not only is it beneficial, but it's actually saving money on the cost of calls. So overall, your work session seemed pretty dang positive about the roles of social workers, and I am definitely right on board. The one thing that I had some concern about was the notion of discretion. Because it's not that our police force is bad or doing anything necessarily wrong. It is the question about judicial bias and the action of discretion. It worries me to think, I personally like the idea of contracting a social worker that is not under the control of our police force, because they have different roles that they need to play. And I don't want them to be under the discretion of our police force. And that is something that when we talk about racism and kind of racial discrimination, a lot of that that's where that discretion comes into play, right? Like, someone has marijuana. Do you arrest them? Do you not arrest them? Do you maybe call their parents? So these are problems that we might think that we don't have here because we don't have a very high people of color population, but we know that it is there. We hear stories of it. Cincinnati, I'm sure y'all have all been aware of, has come out with really good statistics on the no-narc warrants, which neighborhoods are involved, which families are involved. It's largely people of color that are being affected. Also the same people who are arrested based on drug charges, it's largely people of color. I've come across some data from even the sharing of mugshots by our own Oxford police force, that if you look back through all of them, the number of people that are arrested are largely not people of color. The number of mugshots that we share that are people of color are a really high proportion. I haven't seen that in a while on our social media, but there are screenshots out there of every single mugshot comparing this racial discretion, even on our social media. So I'm with y'all. I'm in complete support of the social worker, but I am very hesitant to say that it is under the discretion of the police. Again, y'all do a good job. I know we're really lucky to have a good chief, and you're good at what you do. I think that I want to solve systemic problems. So substance abuse, homelessness, domestic violence, mental health, without that judicial bias or discretion. And I believe and see that the data is out there that a social worker who is trained in this is the best person to handle that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chantel. And maybe this is a good time for Larry Nadler, who's chairing that work group, and Amber Franklin, who's on it, to speak up about what they've done so far, where they are and where they're going. And we will at some point hear from Chief Jones, but I figure, Chief, we might as well wait and let you take down notes of the many different things that I certainly want you to have time to respond to. at some point during this meeting, if you don't mind, kind of waiting and doing it maybe all together. But Larry and then maybe Amber or just Larry could share. I think most of the community knows we formed a work group at council's sort of direction to look, and maybe particularly social worker has come up in this, and they've done some work, and Larry can explain what they've done and where they're going.
Sure. For anyone who's not familiar with the resolution that we're responding to, the first part of 2 was that the police and the PCRRC would work collaboratively to look at how the city can better support the police department in responding to social and behavioral health challenges in the community. Toward that end, 6-person working group was formed with 2 people from the PCRRC, the assistant city manager, the chief of police, and then 2 members of the community, Latricia Hillman and Sharon Custer, who's a Miami faculty member and has also lent a hand that I'll get to in a moment in regard to resources that can help us with our work. We've met 3 times so far, starting on January 14th. We meet every 2 weeks on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Our first meeting was mostly introductory and establishing what we were trying to accomplish. Our second meeting largely focused on bringing in Sharon Perry from Access Counseling, who gave us a lot of insight in terms of the social work perspective and some of the contracting that is done to assist the Oxford Police Department. The meeting last night, which was the 3rd that we've had so far, the primary focus was with Chief Jones' help, looking at a model from Alexandria, Kentucky. The reason that we focus on that, not exclusively, but in particular, was because a lot of the models that are out there are in much larger cities, and we've shared resources from Dayton to Denver. The Coots program in Oregon, probably the best known, but Alexandria is fairly comparable in terms of size of community. So looking at a smaller town, smaller police force, and talked about everything from what Chantel raised about whether were we to pursue this, it would be under the auspices of the police department or in a contractual role, as she expressed a preference for. One of the other pieces is that we have a graduate class at Miami, as I mentioned, with Sharon Custer, who is doing a lot of the legwork for us, looking at literature review, best practices elsewhere. We're not looking to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot out there. So one of the people who called in, I think it was Brendan Humphrey, talked about reaching parts of the community that aren't necessarily plugged in to this meeting or to others. And that is something that is being addressed. Chief Jones has talked about trying to contact people who've had interactions with the police, good, bad, or otherwise, that could talk honestly, frankly, about that. Part of what Sharon Custer is looking at is having faculty-led, but with graduate students as well, attempt to reach different parts of the community, from the professional community right to citizens who have had interactions with the police. So we don't, it'll be more qualitative in nature than quantitative. So it's not a matter of having a large sample, but we are trying to hear all voices to the degree possible. And finally, our fourth meeting, next meeting is on March 3rd, and we will have 2 people from Butler Behavioral Health who will be joining us and sharing their insight and allowing us to ask questions and gain more information as we move forward.
Thank you, Larry. And I don't know if Amber wants to add anything, or if another member of the work group who's maybe on the call. I think I saw Latricia. if they want to add anything, or maybe Larry did a great job. You did a great job, Larry.
You did do a great job. I'll just add a couple of things for the benefit of people who are listening to just give you the dates of our upcoming meetings. So again, they're all on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. So in March, we have 3 meetings, March the 3rd, March 17th, and March 31st. And then in April, we have 2 meetings, April 14th and April 28th. We have some tentative meetings in May, but actually we're expecting that the student group will be done with their report by the end of April. So a couple of things I learned about the working group. This is my first time being on a working group. They're not recorded. Agendas aren't put up very far ahead of time. I think it's within 48 hours, Jessica, generally on the website. And the link is also available within about 48 hours, maybe even the day before. So there's not as much advance notice, but if you check in, you will find a link and you'll be able to sit and listen. So I encourage the community to join. The other thing I would add about the working group, something that we discussed last night, there's the National Police Foundation in January just released a report that they had been working on starting the February of 2020, actually, that's looking at how small towns and small police departments handle crisis situations across the country. And by small, they're looking at police forces with 10 to 75 sworn officers. They had about 380 police departments participate. And I encourage people to go and look for that. I think it's important to remember to know that there are small and medium-sized police departments all over the country that are having this discussion right now. And one of the things that the report pointed out was that after the killing of George Floyd, about 40% of the participating departments reassessed their crisis intervention strategies, even though they may have had some in place beforehand. So I think there is a perception among some within the community that this is somehow punitive, or that we are doing this to give our hardworking officers a hard time. We're not alone in this process. And what I'm happy to see is that we have a department, we have a PCRRC, we have a city council that's interested in continuing this process and this conversation and seeing how we can improve over time. So I think we're in good company, and we're doing some good work, and we appreciate everyone's hard work and the comments that we've heard today.
And the goal is that group reports back to the full PCRRC at our May meeting, which will be the 3rd Thursday in May. And then with a recommendation of a suggestion of what the city of Oxford ought to do. And then the PCRC would vote to send it back, send that recommendation to council as one of the commissions and boards to make that recommendation to council. And so they're meeting pretty much every other week until then, and working really hard to think of, how can we help our police department do some things that are sort of above and beyond, policing for criminal activity in areas that need a response, but maybe don't need someone to go with the police or instead of the police or whatever. So that's what they're working on, and we hope to get that back. City council sort of put a time limit on it. We have to get it back to them, their first meeting in June. So if you're interested, you can go to the city website before their meetings every other Wednesday and log in. They don't really have time for public comment necessarily. They're going to handle that other ways. They just get information. So I don't know if anybody else in the public wants to speak on their ideas on that, or share any other experiences of policing in Oxford for the sake of the community and the commission and Chief Jones to hear those things. If you want to raise your hand.
Yep, we have one. Ms. Rosenberg, go ahead.
All right, I think I'm unmuted. So I just wanted to say good evening. I was kind of hoping to speak a little later in the evening because I was hoping to hear from voices in the community that I haven't really heard before in one of these meetings. But there was certainly some really good feedback, and I was glad for the people that did contribute tonight. As Jessica said, my name is Shauna Rosenberg. I do live at 1036 Arrowhead Drive, and I am speaking on behalf of Black Lives Matter Oxford. Our goal for speaking tonight is to keep the momentum going for the important work that is being done by the city and the police department and the PCRRC. We know that our influence has been instrumental in the city moving ahead with investigating how to better handle crisis response and how to have a more equitable and racially just community. We were, frankly, tickled pink to have been mentioned in the city's just published annual report and are so pleased that our suggested examination of how to have a more safe and inclusive community has been implemented by active city council, even with all the challenges already brought by COVID and the economy. The city of Oxford showed that it made racial justice a priority. With the current work group focused on what changes OPD can make to improve crisis response, I'd like to echo Mr. Nadler from the work group's meeting last night. He said that this work started out of a movement for racial justice. And the reason this is a racial justice issue is that crisis response by a police officer does not mean the same thing to every person in need. The very presence of a police officer increases the risk that someone will enter the criminal justice system, which does have inherent issues with racism. Our diverse community of residents and students all deserve to feel equally safe when they are in what is likely an already unpleasant situation. We see that the good work is getting done, and we're just here to remind you of why crisis response by police was first highlighted by the Oxford community, not just from our organization, but many other organizations during this summer. I am glad to hear that you will continue to try and get input from unheard voices. I hope that when I mute myself again, that there are other hands raised in order to give you some input tonight. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, Shauna.
Next, we have Ms. Wengler. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is Ann Wengler. I live at 610 David Drive. And I've learned some interesting things tonight that I didn't know about, and I was glad to hear. But I want to speak specifically about people with diverse abilities and how they sometimes end up in, serious tragic crises in their interactions with police because of lack of understanding. And I'm glad to hear that there's some training going on. But I think the idea of having social workers available and approaching those situations without force and without visible guns can make a big difference in terms of preventing tragedies. We hear about people with autism, with Down syndrome, who have lost their lives because of, I think, really lack of training. And I hope we're working more positively about that. I also want to bring up the issue of social workers not just being available to go to a call, but what I deal with in our family is a family member with severe mental health problems who refuses to access help. And he is just kind of a powder keg waiting to explode. And we feel very helpless because we're told by Butler Behavior Health, unless he's in a crisis, they won't come and help us, but then he won't seek help. And so we're very fearful about if we would have to call like the sheriff or police, it would end in a tragic situation because his anger is so explosive when he gets out of control. And I just wish there were more funds and resources at the prevention level to help families get the help they need so it doesn't turn into one of those, dangerous, tragic situations, and that it can, people can get the help they need instead of it becoming a crisis. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Ann. I know at the commission, there's many times we've talked about this. I know that we've had a parent with a child with autism come and then also talk to Chief Jones on their own. And just in those situations, I know a lot of families have real concern about people misreading someone's intention and or reason for not complying or whatever, maybe because they're autistic. I know that there was just a sad situation down in Forest Park with an autistic young man, and it's just a misreading. But I do know that part has come up in our commission before. Chief Jones and officers have met with families and responded to things. So I think it's important to sort of keep that in our forefront, that when people face these crises, their families really are frightened about what that police response is going to be. In Oxford, so far, so good, and we certainly want to keep it that way. And we applaud the Oxford Police Department when they respond and look into more training, et cetera. So thank you for sharing that, Ann.
I don't see any other hands just yet.
Yeah.
We have 36 people listening in.
And I'm glad they're listening, because even if they don't have something to share, hopefully they're learning something.
Oh, right, Mr. Bracken, go ahead.
Hello, thanks, Jessica. Jason Bracken, 401 East Church Street, member of council. I really appreciate a lot of the comments made so far, both anecdotal and on the direction of the city. I wanted to say that I would love to get more data and hear more community experiences, because we don't always hear from everyone. But I wanted to point out that even if we got everybody's experiences and everything looked absolutely perfect, which is never the case. There's always criticisms and room to grow and reflect. But even if that was the case, hypothetically, I still think there's a very good argument to be made to implement best practices and best models. That in any situation, we should be doing the best we can, so we preempt anything that could come up, even if things were seemingly perfect at any given moment, which is also, of course, never the case. So I really hope that we use this opportunity to implement the best that we can do, not just for Oxford, like hopefully it applies to Oxford too. We don't want to miss any problems that our citizens are having. But if we can be a shining example of how to best do policing and social services and just a responsive city to the needs of citizens, period, not even just local to Oxford, that would be great, because our impact could be influential towards other communities that could really use a best model and best practices and see examples where it's working in other places, so that they can help address problems that might be much worse in their city than it is in ours in Oxford. So I hope we really use this opportunity, and I just wanted to thank everybody for considering this to begin with. I hope we grow and get better and improve. And JJ, you can lead the way. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason. I don't know, maybe at this point, Chief Jones, if you maybe want to respond to some of the things you have heard or enlighten us on some of the things, and maybe Jessica, but she sees one more hand. So we will let that person go, and then Chief Jones. Thank you, Jessica.
I have the person named Jackson. Go ahead.
Jackson needs to unmute.
Jackson, if it's on the bottom left hand of your screen, if you wiggle your mouse, there'll be like a little mute button you can click, and then it should unmute you.
Okay, well, maybe while that person's figuring out their technology there, I don't know if Chief Jones or Jessica is a person from the city who's worked on that work group, if either of you wanted to respond to anything right now. And your response may then further stimulate people's thoughts about things.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mead. First, I'll just say this is great getting this many community members to provide feedback. And I know it was mentioned about how it's great that we have this annual community meeting to get feedback, but I'll just remind everybody that at any of the PCRRC meetings, you can come provide that feedback. You can also come to a city council meeting. You can also go to our website and provide feedback on your experience with an officer, and then it'll come to me, or you could email the PCRRC members. So you don't have to wait for this meeting to raise concerns or to offer what you think is working. You can call me. You can. I think we're all very open to hearing that. To address a point earlier, I do think that I think it was Mr. Humphreys talked about the social media and sharing this, and I think that is a challenge that we've, how do we get that word out? And we did share it on our social media to come to this meeting, but there's a lot of people we're not touching from that. And I will say, just personally as a leader, I do go out into our impoverished neighborhoods. I talk to people, and so I'm not just sitting in my office and not engaging. I'm on a regular basis going out in places where we have a high call volume and talking to folks, and I meet with folks individually to inform them what we're doing. So, and that's exactly the point I made in the work group last night, that I want to hear from the folks who've had contact with us, good or bad. And there's some challenges with that and some privacy issues that Sharon Custer had brought up, but I think we are seeking that input. So, and then Ms. Brinkman had got me thinking about, all the challenges we face when it comes to communicating. And I think we do try to do a good job of communicating through social media and through a lot of our outreach programs. Of course, COVID stopped some of that, but clearly, there's more we can do to communicate. And so we're going to think more about that. But no, a lot of great feedback. Yeah, so I appreciate everybody's comments.
Thank you, Chief. And I don't know if you wanted to pipe in there, Jessica, and add anything.
Sure, just from the work group perspective, it's been really helpful to hear from a city administration standpoint. It's been helpful to hear from the social workers who've done ride-alongs and who work currently with our officers in the department, to hear the perspective and to hear what they think the challenges are. So that's been pretty helpful in our kind of just guiding our thoughts as we think about how to address, gaps in service in our community and new solutions. And then I think we're all looking forward to hearing the results of the focus groups that the Miami students are going to be hosting, and then also the perhaps one-on-one interviews. So we're going to just all really look forward to hearing that information in the coming months. And then now we have some more hands raised. So are you open to that, Mr. Mead?
Yes, go ahead.
Looks like we have Fran, go ahead.
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. And Pat, thank you for reminding me of this meeting. And as you know, the Oxford NAACP has been pushing for real change in policing in Oxford. And we support the PCRRC. And we would like to commend you, the commission, for all that you have done. And we believe that you are committed to doing even more. And having a meeting like this is an example of that. A meeting where it was supposed to actually make it easy for community members to feel free to express themselves through this channel, without fear of reprisal. And I'm disappointed because I really feel that there are groups in Oxford that are not using the PCRRC, and they do have some concerns and complaints. At this point, I think we really have to copy on several of the persons that have spoken, and that is we need to consider looking at more ways that maybe we can have more of community members to be engaged. And I'm saying that because the Oxford NAACP, has sent out notices of the meeting. I have spent this week calling, I don't know how many community people in which they are concerned and say that they were going to try to be on and express themselves. But I think there's a degree of not feeling real comfortable in expressing themselves because we have such good speakers and the members of your commission that speak so well of what is being done. And actually they don't feel as if they can speak as well themselves can speak as well to relay some of their concerns. So that being said, I think that's one of the things we need to look at. I certainly have tried. I don't know how many hours I've been on the phone trying to get people to call in. Now, I know we do have some issues here, and they have expressed some to me. And so, but there is one of the other things that the Oxford NAACP, we are in support of your efforts now to really try to get, I think, the partnership with a social worker. I really feel that would be one way that we could possibly get more of the community involved, and probably through that aspect of your work, the policing, with the partnership with a social worker, it could build more trust in the community in such a way that I think that we would be able to, I won't say solve, but actually be able to communicate and have a clear understanding and actually work together to, with the community, with their interests, and also feeling safe in Oxford. So that there's equally safeness in here for all community members. So I do think that the social work idea is really a good one, because there are issues dealing with homelessness and also mental health that tends to, or even family disturbance, domestic violence and stuff. There are things that people are having problems, and they really don't want to call the police to address those problems. And I think the social worker would be the partnership within the police, having that there can actually help us to solve a lot of the problems, and at least try to, in the community. So that's basically, I'm in support of the social worker idea and the partnership with police. I don't know a whole lot about it, and I'll be interested in learning even more. Okay. That's it.
Thank you, Fran. And I think Fran brings up a point that if she is aware of people that have concerns about policing in Oxford, but they still feel uncomfortable about bringing it up. And we have talked about this for years on the commission on how to help people feel comfortable bringing up concerns. I know that one of the things we worked on, and maybe at our next meeting, we can do a checkup how we're coming with that second proposal where we're going to talk about business cards with information about filing a concern. And also we had talked about possibly coming up with a way of filing anonymous concerns. Now, of course, if someone puts up an anonymous concern, there's not much an institution can do about it, except become aware that there's people that have some concern, that it might help the institution improve, but you certainly can't take action to make any remedy to it or investigate any particular officer about something. But possibly you could get information if you get repetitive anonymous concerns about some issue that might help the institution improve. So Fran, it is something we've talked about, something we've struggled with, finding a way to make people feel comfortable approaching an institution that basically has authority. And, that makes some people nervous. And we've been working on that and we'll continue to do that. So thanks for bringing that up. I don't know if anybody else is raising their hand. Yes, they are. So go ahead, Jessica.
Mr. Chandler, go ahead.
Can everybody hear me? All right. I just want to second kind of what everybody has said. Just thanking all of you and all the hard work that Oxford representatives and community members are doing. I think it's great to see people thinking about and talking about these issues. To Fran's point and to kind of a point that Councilperson Bracken made earlier, I would love to know more about what's going on with the complaint forms and that sort of thing. I'd also love to hear an update on the pedestrian stop data, which was another one of the proposals that I worked on with other BLM members. So I don't know if there's time for that, but that's something that either now or at the next meeting, I'd like to hear updates on.
Can I give a real quick update? We
Yes.
do have a feedback form on the city website now, and it can be anonymous. It allows for that. The name is optional. I just want you guys, and it can be good or bad. Feedback,
Okay.
it's called a feedback form.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that very hard to find, Jessica? Is it pretty accessible?
If you click City of Oxford and click police, it's on the list of links there.
Okay, thank you very much for that information.
And we're redoing a new website, and that'll be launched in June. And so that'll have some updates. So it is the way it is until June. And then after that, you'll see some new page builds and things like that. And we do have one other raised hand.
Okay.
Ms. Southard, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Jessica and Pat, I think this is remarkable what you're doing. Jack and I have been former city council members and have felt great confidence in the police. I really want to say that my knowledge of this meeting did come from NAACP. I think it's marvelous that they are in support of what you're doing. I am concerned that there are places, and I really support John Jones as to what he has done as an outreach. I'm sure honestly going to communities where he is finding those calls coming from. I'm not certain if we know of all of those parts of our neighborhoods that are not calling in with fear. And I'm really very concerned that there is somehow a means, and it may be through some communication that NAACP would be willing to share of how Chief Jones might be able to better know the community, the neighborhood that needs that outreach that we're not finding. I do commend the police department. I think what this commission is doing is outstanding. I would have to say that it seems to me that the goal of Oxford now with the city council, I do support to become a best practices community. It would delight me to think of that's what we desire to be. And it would not begin to be the statement that our police department is not an outstanding one, but that there are small measures that could make a difference that would delight us and would bring enormous pride to Chief Jones and the members of his police department. I'm excited with whom it is that the commission is going to be meeting with upcoming, and I really look forward to that May meeting. Thank you so very much. Jack and I both thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Sally. I don't know if we have any more hands raised, but maybe what we'll do is see if any of the other commission members wanted to chime in now. The other four who haven't spoken, you can choose not to, but if you wanted to say anything about our work or where you see us going or what you think might need to be done, and then we'll hear from Chief Jones again. So is any of the other four, you have some hands up?
We have 2 more hands up.
Okay, hang on, let me. Okay, so I'll leave it at this. The other 4 members can think if you want to say anything. We'll hear from these 2 people, and if you don't, you can pass, and then we'll let Chief Jones talk again also. So go ahead, Jessica, thank you.
All right, next we're going to go with the phone number 1049. And you press *6 to unmute.
Yes, my name is Karen Burt Gibson, and I live in Oxford, Ohio at 513 North Beach Street. And I've been a citizen of Oxford for over 60 years probably. And I've had some good experiences and a few bad experiences in Oxford when it comes to one of the bad, like a situation I experienced was profiling. I was trailed a few times in Oxford for a few days actually, and then I was finally pulled over, and I can understand why there was like 4 or 5 policemen like stopping me, you know, me and my son, and I'm a minority here in Oxford, and I, you know, good citizen and good standing, never had any issues, and I was just really shocked that I was pulled over, and I really didn't get a good reason why I was pulled over at the time, other than you just need to step out of your car. And they finally had the wrong vehicle, but they didn't find that out until after they questioned me. And I was driving a vehicle with my husband. He's old school, so he liked white walls on his vehicle. But we were pulled over, and I felt very intimidated. So I felt like when they got to the bottom of it, they found out it was a RAV4, a black RAV4 utility vehicle, and an incident that happened that was really bad where someone hit a pedestrian, kept going. But I felt like, you know, I didn't even know, I wasn't aware of that situation because there's such great officers in Oxford, and I support the policemen here in Oxford. I've never had a bad run-in with any of them, but that one particular experience, I felt like, you know, for no reason, it was just profiling. So, but for the most part, I really support the Oxford Police. I was invited to attend your meeting tonight, and it's been enriching to me, and I would like to definitely be a part of it because I was more just enjoyed what I've heard, and there's different ways I know in the future that we can share different experiences. Some things that it's hard to talk about, but you can put it out there in a different way. Maybe I think that we can get it out there in a different way by being anonymous or either just bringing it forward, you know, at different times. But I really appreciate being a part of your meeting tonight. And like I said, the majority of the police here, they have just been wonderful. And I support the Oxford Police here in Oxford. I just had one really bad experience, and that was pretty alarming to me and my son. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I hope someone caught the name. My ears aren't that good. and we have that down, but I appreciate you sharing that. I know sometimes it's hard to share the negative experiences, and I know, all those things are the perception of where you're coming from, and I'm sure that was nerve-wracking for you. And it turned out to be a mistake, and unfortunately those happen sometime. But I appreciate your sharing it. If you want to share it further, we'd love to do that sometime. It looks like you have one more hand, Jessica.
Yes, Miss Southard, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that everything we do, every action we take is not just for the present, but for the future. And we do have a wonderful community and a wonderful police force, but you don't know what the future will bring. So we are trying, as I hope we are all doing, to create a culture in which people can speak, and a culture of inclusivity and welcoming to all. I do want to add, though, in addition, that when I had a friend who was having some problems with a police officer, and she privately asked me what to do, and I contacted Chief Jones, and we had a private meeting, and the issue was taken care of. So I do want to say that people I want to commend the chief for being so responsive. And I think that people, I hope people know that they can reach out, even privately, to take care of a problem that they face. That's really all I wanted to say. And thank you for your work. And thank you for having another meeting. I think it's great. I heard many announcements about this meeting, but of course, many people are not linked to various groups and might not have known. But that doesn't mean we can't reach out to them, and that doesn't mean that they can't privately come forward. So thank you for the good work.
Thank you, Edna. Okay, I don't know if any of the other four commissioners want to add anything in now, and then we'll hear from Barb. So Hannah, go ahead.
So thank you everyone for showing up tonight and for sharing your voices. Thank you for continuing to encourage and challenge and call for accountability on the part of OPD as well as PCRRC. I know I joined in November 2019, I think, officially, and just in the last year, seeing people show up and work so hard in the ways that you have has just really been encouraging. I mean, this is what it's supposed to be, right? If we truly believe in the ideals of what it means to be a concerned citizen, a participant in the ideal fundamental participatory democracy, I mean, this is what it should be, right? We should be having multiple voices. We should be using care in reaching out to vulnerable populations to ensure that their voices are heard, and that it's not just about, listening, it's about connecting, and it's about putting action behind that. And I think you can see from all of the meetings that have taken place within the last year, and even some of the projects that have been brought up today, demonstrate that the city of Oxford is trying to address some of these things. So I also wanted to emphasize that, like, part of being a citizen in a democracy is to also understand, like, the history of policing in this country. And I say this as a clinically licensed social worker who in the last several years has also had to confront the history of social work and our profession and our discipline, and acknowledge that there are systems that continue, like, and our profession as it is, we're still a part of this conversation of what is it, how is it that I am also a part of this system that continues to allow unjust structures, but also understanding that I have a responsibility to make change. And so one more thing on democracy, like, we have a responsibility as a community to adapt and grow. And just because the conversations that are taking place are happening doesn't mean that something is necessarily wrong, although we have cause to understand that change has to happen. But this is also a responsible way to understand that society changes, and therefore our policies and our cultural norms have to change. And I think a few people brought up this idea of prevention. I think I just want to continue to emphasize that prevention and intervention are key rather than being retroactive. So some questions that I have are related to perhaps what might come up in our next meeting is when will we be able to have the reports for the stop data? I can't remember if that usually took place in like February where we got the reports, or if that would be happening in May.
We're going to
And-
have it. We're going to have that in the data report from the OPD will be in May.
In May, okay.
And then the other thing in May is we'll make a recommendation regarding the alternatives to policing. So that's going to be two big items in May's meeting.
Okay, and then I had one more question, and this is something else that I'll be inquiring and pestering Jessica about in the future is the complaint form. It's my understanding that it'll be anonymous, but can I inquire for public record that when it is rolled out that it will be anonymous?
No, it's live now.
I mean, the one that's coming out on the new website.
Oh, it'll be probably the same form. It just it can be laid out on the site page better, I guess I mean.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I just thought it would be something completely different. So I had a misunderstanding. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you, Hannah. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything. Egon, go ahead. And then we do have Barb Crusoe who wants to say something.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank everybody. And, one of the things that really caught my attention today was, the question about engagement. I think it was Mr. Humphrey that first brought it up, about reaching out to the population that is really not engaged with, OPD and with, all of the efforts of, our commission as well, and, I really appreciate that because, having worked in, in the health insurance company for the last 8 years or so, we always talk about, we need to do community outreach, we need to engage our members, and, we feel like, everybody needs to be aware of everything that we want to do for them and everything that we're doing. And it is just not that difficult. And I know that there are ways to improve engagement. One of the things that we have to be aware of is that, everything that we do is maybe not central to their lives because, they have so many other things going. There are so many other things going. There's a pandemic going on and the employment and everything like that. The last thing they have to worry about right now, perhaps is about, our efforts to do outreach in one way or another. But there are ways, and I know that the police department has a very popular Facebook, account that used to do, a number of, scheduled posts. I haven't seen as many of them lately. But they do have, social media. And I think, that maybe, that's one of the things that the topics that we can take up is how do we, use those accounts that already have a pretty large following. I think Twitter has a pretty large following. Facebook has a pretty large following. but yet I know that people were complaining online on Facebook this last couple days about their cars being towed because they didn't know that they had to move their cars from the emergency snow routes. So it is important for for us to outreach to the community, and I mean that is a very important point. Um, to communicate with the community in so many different ways, and I think that was mostly OPD. This last few days that I'm thinking about, but certainly, there's a definitely a big opportunity there, and I think that is a great place where we can make some inroads with the community for sure. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say. So, thanks.
Thank you, Egon. We still have Barb with her hand raised. Jessica, if you could.
Go ahead, Ms. Caruso.
Thank you. I'm sorry, are we okay? Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
I'm sorry I'm speaking so late in the meeting. I was listening to folks and trying to think about all the things you were doing. And then when Chief Jones said that he goes to communities, it sort of resonated a bit in my head about the difficulty of getting to people who don't feel enfranchised or don't feel like they speak as well as other people, or where there is a kind of class or other sort of difficulty. And what I was thinking, and also what I don't know, is whether you all have thought, the police commission and the working group have thought about the flow of information and the flow of acquiring information going in a different direction. That is, you're anticipating folks coming to you, you're making complaint forms, you're announcing meetings, you're doing just every right thing in that regard, it seems to me. But to whom are you going? That is, are you going to a meeting of the NAACP that's announced to be looking at these issues? And are you going to listen? I don't have the answer to that question, but it's that kind of direction. And are you going not in your strength? That is to say, one person or two persons from your group going so where you are likely to be outnumbered. Are there community places where the city people that are going or the commission people that are going will be outnumbered by the people who are at that meeting for a purpose other than coming to see you? And you are a part, but not the most important part of that meeting. That kind of thing, that flow might be useful. You may in fact be doing that, and I don't have that information. If you are, terrific. But if not, in my experience, it has helped to be the one who goes rather than the one who receives, to be the one that listens without soliciting comment. That, you see what I'm saying? To just flip the flow from people coming to you going to people. It might make a difference in who you get and how you get people. And the power of numbers, that is, you being less a powerful presence and more of a more vulnerable presence. That's just what I was thinking as I was listening to you chat. Thank you very much.
Ms. Caruso, for the record, could you state your address for us?
Sure, sorry. It's Barbara Caruso, 6071 Booth Road, Oxford.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Amber.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the comments from the beginning of the meeting to the very end, Ms. Booth. Yeah, thank you, Barb, as well for speaking. A couple points. Kathy Brinkman's comment about the survey. One of the benefits of surveys sometimes is that they they make us more aware. Sometimes in just doing the survey, we ask ourselves questions that we didn't think about before. And so I think, you know, even though some people will get the survey who don't really have the answers, having gone through the survey is going to do exactly what it did for Kathy, which is I should, you know, look for these answers and maybe I can engage more deeply with the community. So I think that can be a good thing. And I appreciate, Pat, it was Karen Bird Gibson who had spoken earlier, whose name you didn't catch. But one of the things that I think I want us to keep in mind is that, you know, this doesn't have to be an either or conversation, it's a both and, right? So there are people who have positive experiences and there are people who don't. And I think, you know, Pat knows, you know, there are different ways I've tried from the very beginning to try and have an audience with the African-American community. And at the time I was not as embedded, and I know more people now. I think one of the challenges with this is that when we think about negative experiences, oftentimes, especially with what we've seen in the news, our mind goes to like physical violence, like choking, shooting, you know, those kinds of things. And I think we need to be willing to think about ways that people might feel marginalized in terms of words or how they're approached. And there was a conversation I had with Chief Jones with someone who didn't want to go through formal means, and Chief Jones was very responsive, but it was someone who had a negative experience many years ago. It really hadn't spoken about it with anyone within OPD, but it was about respect. It was about feeling belittled in the context of an arrest. And I think it speaks to the difference between maybe intent and impact as well. I think all of us who are in positions of power, sometimes professors or police officers, or if you're a manager or a boss, we tend to underestimate the power that we have in a situation. And so, you know, I think one of the reasons why sometimes people of color don't come forward is because for some of us, sometimes it's just coming out of an interaction without being physically harmed feels like a win, especially when you're afraid. And so perhaps feeling like, okay, you know, I was scared, I felt uncomfortable, but in the end, I walked away, might lead people to believe that they don't really have anything substantive to share. And so I think we can hold both in our hands. I think we can talk about the wonderful things that OPD is doing. We can talk about, you know, Officer Butler and Officer Wagers and Chief Jones and all those wonderful things, and still leave space for, as Barb said, kind of being, listening with humility and having cultural humility. And I see Chief Jones as someone who has that. I think, you know, Chief Jones, when you've said that sometimes the uniform carries stigma with it, I think that's a sign of some cultural dexterity, where as much as you might want to see yourself as a hero all the time, being able to put yourself in someone else's position and say, but they don't always see us that way. And so, yeah, just being willing to hear those stories when people are comfortable coming forward, and knowing that just because we're not hearing them doesn't mean they're not there to be shared. And we can do a both and situation.
Thank you, Amber. I think Chief Jones, I don't know if there's anything you want to respond to that's come up near the end of the meeting, and then maybe I'll just close this out. I think people have had a chance to give some input. So Chief, if you wanted to have me.
I just had a quick thing to answer Mr. Chandler's question. He'd asked about the pedestrian stop data. And so we are now collecting that. We began January 1st with collecting that. We will present to you in May the data from our traffic stop data collection that we've been doing all of 2020. That'll be presented to you in May. And then the pedestrian stop data, which I believe is what he was referencing, is that is being collected now. And so that data will be presented next year at that data meeting.
Right. We will not get that data in May because you just started collecting it.
Right.
So yeah.
Yes, I just pointed out that process happened. We figured out how to collect it the best of our abilities, and we are doing that. So just wanted to give that update to answer his question.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to thank everybody, commission members, Chief Jones and Jessica. I know you go to a lot of night meetings and organize a lot of things. We really appreciate your work. I appreciate the other members of the commission, giving up their time to try to make Oxford a better place and to serve your community. And I want to thank all the people who showed up to listen in and to speak. We can only help the Oxford Police Department be even better than it already is if we get input from citizens. And this is not a adversarial relationship. And I just want to thank everyone for speaking respectfully, for listening respectfully. Yesterday, someone told me, "Oh, you're going to have a really horrible meeting. You should see Facebook." I went on Facebook, which is always a bad idea. I might put out there to the community, always a bad idea. Read a thread and thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be horrible. But then you realize those people that type those things on Facebook aren't the ones who show up and give actually constructive information and want to be part of working together. So stay off Facebook. It's just a bad idea. So I had all these concerns. It turned out to be nothing. But I'm just really proud that in our city, we can do democracy. We can listen to the community, that our city administration, our city police department, our city council is responsive, and that people are trying to problem solve and govern and serve. And I'm just, it's just an honor to be a part of this. So I want to thank everybody. And with that, we'll close the meeting. So I'll take a motion to adjourn. I guess I should close it officially.
Motion.
Okay, thank you, Egon. And a second?
Second.
Second, and all in favor on the commission, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Jessica.